I will introduce InnoSLA-SH sub-short fixture. This is a definitive solution to atrophic posterior mandibular ridge. This short implant indication is first atrophic mandibular posterior ridge with a 4 to 6 millimeter bone height, and second extraction socket under 8 millimeter bone height with a 2 to 4 millimeter basal bone. And we did vertical bone graft in the limited atrophic bone height ridge. So we have to do autogenous bone block. And this bone block is obtaken from chin or ramus. And then this block is fixed by the mini screw. And then after 3 or 6 months healing period, implant was placed. Another method is tenting screw and RHBMP2 in the bone height 4.7 millimeter ridge. Mini screw is placed in the center of ridge, and then bone particle is augmented and primary closed. And now here, after 3 months, about vertical bone height 10 millimeter was increased, and then implant is placed. And this in atrophy mandibular posterior ridge, so implant is placed obliquely against the mandibular canal. And fourth, implant is placed avoided against the mental foramen, and then some RHBMP2 bone graft was done. Somebody who will, could think 7 millimeter length implant is optimal in atrophic mandibular bone ridge, but so we have to place a half depth of 7 millimeter implant. So only 4 millimeter height is placed into bone. In this case, the exposed screw thread will make a granulation tissue around the bone or soft tissue. And the supra-bone level of platform switching makes crestal bone loss. And finally, implant picture will be fractured, and graft technique will be failed. So we have to use platform switching implant design. So implant, we know the platform switching design protect cortical bone height and peri-implant tissue. So we have to use platform switching design implant. So implant top have to be coincident with a ridge crest, or this implant has to be placed under crestal bone, like this. So here, implant top is placed 2 or 3 mm below crestal bone. And here, We have to decide the implant placement depths according to gingival thickness. If gingival thickness is thin, under 2 millimeter, so in this case, this crestal bone could be resolved to 3 millimeter from gingival crest. But gingival thickness is over 3 millimeter. We can coincide implant top and reach crest. So implant placement level has to be kept 3 millimeter, at least 3 millimeter from gingival crest. Here. So if this bone gingival thickness is 1 millimeter, here, 1 millimeter, this implant placement level has to be below crestal bone. But here 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter bone height is reduced and implant is placed 3 millimeter below gingival crest. But if gingival height have 3 millimeter, we don't need the subcrestal implant placement technique. So we have to keep the 3 millimeter from gingival. Why? If here thin 1 millimeter gingival reduce bone height about 2 millimeter. So we have to insert deeply from the gingival crest. Here, another, if you don't like the deep replacement technique, you have to use collagen matrix or autogenous connective tissue graft around the picture top, because this collagen material or autogenous connective tissue will increase gingival height and thickness. So you don't like this technique, you don't want collagen matrix graft, so you have to insert deeply implant from gingival crest. But at least 3.5 millimeter subgingival placement will make an emergence profile. So here we have, so I recommend 4 millimeter because we can control the emergence profile. So here, but at least 3.5 millimeter gingival subgingival level is optimum for emergence profile. And we have to keep the buccal to at least 2 millimeter with us to protect peri-implantitis. And extraoral implant is used for the cancer rehabilitation, like eye or ear, nose. So 4 millimeter length implant was used in oromaxillofacial reconstruction area. But this is used in the maxilla and mandible. So I checked 10 years follow. So in the maxillary sinus area here, remainder bone was 4 millimeter. So there's a 4 millimeter length implant placed, And after 10 years, this level, bone level was maintained without peri-implantitis. And mandible here, this bone height was 7. So 4 millimeter implant was placed here, 3. And after 7 years, this bone level was maintained. Some bone graft area was changed to bone. So bone level was increased here. So we can get success result by the 4 millimeter implant. But 4 millimeter length implant have some problem to get FDA approved, because below 7 millimeter length implant is divided to significant risk device as defined in the 21 CFR 812.3. But you can use IDE regulation, but you have to do clinical trial. So it will be take a long time, and IRB don't like this high risk device for clinical trial. So we have to make a 4 millimeter thread implant, but tissue levels platform cup implant. Here, we developed it in a short picture. The thread height is 4 millimeter here, and the other this tissue portion is 3 millimeter. The diameter is classified from diameter 4.5, 5.5, and 6. So, all thread height is 4 millimeter, but its cup is 2 millimeter. One is margin. So totally the tissue portion is 3 millimeter, and bone level is 4 millimeter. Implant. So you can you can control the placement level according to bone height from 4 millimeter to 7 millimeter. Here, 4 and 7 millimeter. And this implant have a cutting edge and a wide pitch and internal hex 2.5 connection, interchangeable with the hexagonal implant. And surface treatment have three kinds. So first, SLA area here, and second, RBM surface, and remain the 1 millimeter is smooth, turned surface. Why? We can control this implant placement level according to the implant surface color. Here, 4 millimeter is SLA, the dark black color, and second, this from 4 millimeter and 6 millimeter to 6 millimeter is RBM, just the gray color. And final 1 millimeter is turned smooth, shiny surface. So we can control this implant placement level. RBM surface is biocompatible surface to fibroblast of gingiva as well as osteoblast of bone. So this surface area is compatible with the gingiva and bone. And here, if this soft tissue is contacted here, smooth and RBM surface, so there was no difference between RBM and the smooth surface in the peri-implantitis. So there is no peri-implantitis at the RBM surface area. 7 millimeter, we can control this placement level. Here, bone height, remained bone was 2 millimeter. So implant, 7 millimeter implant placement depth was done in the here, and then bone grafted. After 7 years, here, bone level maintained at the 7 millimeter level. So 7 millimeter placement level is safe. And we can control the drill depth with a stopper here. Stopper, yellow, or pink, and blue stopper. So if you attach this yellow stop, drill height is 4 millimeter. So we insert red color stopper. That's 5.5 millimeter implant placement depth is prepared. And you use a blue stopper, so 7 millimeter drill depth is finished. And the sequence, drill sequence, first point drill and 2, 3, 4, 4.5, 5, 6. And then you can use a countersink if the bone quality is dense. Bone quality is if bone quality is 1 or 2, you can insert additionally this countersink drill. And the drill sequence at first point drill and diameter 2 and then diameter 4 and implant placement. Diameter 4 implant is placed. And then if you want the diameter 5, there's a sequentially point, diameter 2, 4, 4.5, 5 diameter implant. Drill is inserted and then diameter 5, short picture is placed. If you want a wider 6 millimeter implant, you can use the additional wider drill. But you keep this yellow drill stop. So yellow means 7 millimeter drill depth. And countersink is used in the dense bone quality. And then here, this picture mount driver is adapted to mount, and then latchet inserted. At minimal installation torque is 25. So actually, atrophic mandibular bone have a dense basal bone. So we can get at least 40 Newton centimeter or over 50 Newton centimeter. So in this case, the healing period will be shortened to 1 month. But initial talk was 25. I recommend a healing period 3 months. And here, this is short, inner short implant kit. At first, the point drill here. Point drill, no. Point drill have no stop. Here. Stop have 3.5 and 7 depth line. And diameter 2 drill is adapted to handpiece. And then yellow color 7mm stop is adapted to drill. If you want 5.5 implant placement depth level, you can choose this pink color stopper. And then blue color stop means 4mm depth drill. And then diameter 4 drill is adapted. And then diameter 4 implant is placed. Here, pink color stop means 5.5 drill depth. And short implant is fixed with a mount. And the mount driver is adapted to handpiece. And the mount driver catch this mount with a fixture. And implant placed. Model surgery. First, point drill. Adapted. The depth line is marked. First one, 3.5. And second line, 7mm. Here. .5 depth line is marked in the point drill. Yeah, drill depth was 3.5mm. And diameter 2 drill is adapted to handpiece. Pink color stop is adapted. And here, drill depth is 5.5. .5 drill depth was prepared. And then stop is removed and drill is changed to diameter 4mm drill. Diameter 4 drill is adapted to handpiece and stop is changed to, and then diameter 4 drill is penetrated to 5.5mm depth. Picture a mount drive is connected to handpiece and implant mount. Implant mount is catched into mount driver and whole plastic cap is sliced out, and then implant is placed to 5.5 millimeter level. And then latchet drive is adapted on mount, and latchet is adapted and turned. You have to check the torque value. Usually 45 Newton centimeter is applied. And in this case, such a healing period is only 1 month. And the case, bone graft and implant placement was done simultaneously. In here, this buccal bone was thin, so distance the buccal wall here, here. And short implant was prepared. This about 3 millimeter implant was exposed, and primer bone graft and primer closed. And after 6 weeks, this bone mesh was removed, and on the 12 weeks, impression was taken. So we don't care the buccal bone level because 4 millimeter thread height is positioned on the bone level, but the other smooth surface or RBM surface was exposed to gingiva. But I used here BMP. So final restoration. I checked the buccal bone contour. So actually, it's, your bone exposed height was 1.5 millimeter in number 36 and 37 side implant. And after 8 weeks, this new cortical bone was formed. But here I used the BMP solution on the implant surface. So RHBMP2 stimulate bone marrow stem cells. So bone particle was changed to cortical bone within 8 weeks. But you don't use BMP, no problem, because the thread is already below bone level. So there is no any peri-implantitis. Preoperative clinical finding is thin wall and thin knife ridge. And preoperative bone height was 8.8 millimeter in the second molar side, and point drill is inserted, and then diameter 2 drill was adapted, and then 7 millimeter stopper is connected and drill, and change it to diameter 3.5 and diameter 4 drill with depth 7 millimeter stopper, and then diameter pipe drill with depth 7 millimeter stopper is drilled, and diameter pipe short implant was placed, and ratchet with mount driver was used. And check the initial torque value, the 40 Newton centimeter. Check it 2 millimeter buckle distance, and then diameter 6.5 and 7.5 healing abutment was connected here. And healing abutment is fixed below 35 Newton centimeter. And post-operative here, there's only 4 millimeter. 4 millimeter thread height is placed into bone. Long-term data. This patient was 48 years old male. Implant was placed to here 7 millimeter depth, but result, this bone height was maintained. And this patient, 68 years old female, in here, bone height was below 7. Here, short implant placed, and 7 years follow-up check. This bone height was maintained. There is no any marginal bone loss. 60 years old female, in bone height was only 3 or 4 height here. Short implant was placed here. This bone height was maintained, and here side 2 short implant was placed, and result after 8 years, so marginal bone was maintained. So we don't need a vertical bone augmentation. This 68 years old male, here bone height was below 5 millimeter here, and 4 millimeter height implant thread was placed here and here. After 6 years of follow-up, bone level was maintained in short implant. And 96 years old female, so bone height was 7 millimeter, implant placement steps 7. That's after 10 years, the bone height was maintained. And here, upper molar, extraoral implant, length 4. That's here, after 10 years, this 4 millimeter implant was available in the maxilla, submaxillar sinus ridge. And 96 years old female, here bone height was 4.5 in here, in both sides. Short 4 millimeter length extraoral implant was placed. After 8 years, the bone level was maintained. 9 years old male, here short 4 millimeter extraoral implant was placed. After 10 years, this marginal bone was maintained. But this implant prosthesis connection was platform switching. This implant diameter was 5 or 4.5, but above mount diameter is only 4 millimeter. This means platform switching. So there was no any marginal bone loss. 59 years old female. So here 7 millimeter short implant was placed. After 7 years follow-up, here marginal bone was preserved. And 75 years old female, short implant was inserted here. So here, the immediate loaded here, and but after 9 years, the bone level was placed, maintained, and 73 years old female. Here, this extraoral 4 millimeter implant was also maintained here during 9 years old. 78 years old female, 3 millimeter, 4 millimeter extraoral implant was maintained during 7 years follow-up. And 43 years old male, implant, 7 millimeter short implant was placed, and during 5 years follow-up, the marginal bone was preserved. So, in atrophic mandibular ridge is very easy with a short implant without the autogenous bone vertical augmentation procedure and healing period. So if you get short implant of diameter 4 and 5 and 6 height, thread height 4 millimeter implant was used in the atrophic mandibular bone. You can make prosthesis after 1 month or 3 months according to the bone quality. But usually the bone, atrophic bone is dense, so we can make this crown or bridge on the 1 month after surgery. So I think this short implant is more convenient. Thank you.